Hi, everybody. My name is Beau Weaver. I am a voice actor and narrator in television. And some of you may remember me from one of my favorite roles as Superman for Ruby Spears in 1988. I also got to play the part of Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, the guy with the stretchy arms for Marvel in the series Fantastic Four, and many other animation roles, though most of my work has been as a narrator. And if you guys are millennials, you'll remember renting a video at the video store back before Netflix, right? And at the beginning of the cassette, there would be ads and trailers for other films. But after those were done, a voice came on and said, "And now, our feature presentation." And you're like, "Oh, you're that guy." Yeah. Well, it is my great pleasure now to introduce someone I've become a huge fan of, and I will do it in the voice of another iconic role I had the privilege of playing. In the original Transformers, my role was small. I was Octane, one of the Decepticons. He's the guy turned into the tanker truck, okay? And as he would say, "And now, ladies and gentlemen, Amber, the fangirl."
Hi guys, Amber here. Welcome back to In Conversation with ATF. My guest today is a voice actor. You may know him as the voice of Superman in the Ruby Spears Superman cartoon from the late 80s. You may know him as Octane in G1 Transformers, Feryl in Visionaries. That's the magic of the light, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought so, because I did. Oh,
It's a really good series, by the way. It only ran for one season, but if you can find it someplace, it's really cool.
I will tell you something. I did see it actually for sale when I was in Liverpool. There's a second-hand shop over here called, it's spelled CEX, and you say it as sex, but I say it as CEX. It's just, easier. It's called Knights of the Magical Light. They had the box set, the whole series for £15, which I think is about $18.
It's a little bit obscure, but it was a very cool series.
Yeah, I think it was made by the same people who did Transformers. That's like Hasbro and Sunbow Entertainment. Who was in it? Susan Blue's in it, Roscoe Lee Brown, Peter Cullen, Jim Cummings, Chris Latta was in it, Neil Ross, Hal Rail, Jonathan Harris.
Yeah, great cast.
And you as well, Beau Weaver. Hey.
Hey,
Thank you for coming on my show.
sure. Well,
Yeah.
what would you like to know? Because my animation career really has to be categorized as ancient history at this point. I have not done animated characters since the mid-90s. It's been quite a while. Most of my work in voiceover is in television promos, the short little things that come on that tell you what show is coming up next, or, news promos, tonight on Eyewitness News, your children are going to die, tune in at 11, that sort of thing. And I work for, there are 25 television stations in the United States, and I'm their voice. And so I do all of their stuff from a studio here at home. I also narrate documentaries on the American cable networks like Discovery and the History Channel and Animal Planet and Smithsonian, things like that. So that's where most of my work, is as a narrator, and that's really how I began. So I was never like, even though I had some really great roles, I was never a major like animation guy like Jim Cummings or Rob Paulson or people like that. I was kind of a minor player in that, but I did voiceover in tons of other realms. I voiced a lot of movie trailers back in the time when movie trailers had, big narrators, and they don't do that so much anymore. But I've worked in every little nook and cranny of the voiceover world, and it was really fun doing animation. It was never really my main thing. Would you like to hear how that started?
Of course, go ahead.
I, as a voice actor, I was doing a lot of different things, and I was at my agent's office once, and there were two actors who were auditioning for an animation role, and one of them was Michael Bell, who is a very famous voice actor and director. Later, in fact, he played Lex Luthor in the Superman that I did for Ruby Spears. And Michael is just an incredible actor, an incredible talent in many, many ways. And he and another man were auditioning for, some animated series. And I looked over at them and I said to Michael, I was waiting for my turn to audition for a commercial. And I said, that looks kind of fun. I've always thought that maybe I'd, give animation a try. Well, Michael looked at me with this condescending kind of, because you come from broadcast, you're really this is for actors. And I went, oh, so basically you're telling me I can't do this. And he said, well, it would be a bit of a stretch. I went, that's interesting. A minute ago, I was about this interested in doing animation. Now, I'm this interested. And in fact, because Michael Bell says I can't do it, I'm going to do it if it kills me. So, so I had done a lot of character voices when I worked in radio. And I thought, well, how hard can that be? So I went and put together a little demo tape of animated characters, and I gave it to my agent. And my agent was married to a very big voice actor who died fairly recently. His name was Jack Angel.
Oh, so your agent was Arlene Thornton.
At the time, yes, and they were at CE. It was CED at the time. This was before she started her own agency. And she called me and she said, "Listen, I got your little animation demo, and I want to talk to you about it. I want you to come in for a little meeting. I'm going to ask my husband Jack to sit in on the meeting if that's okay." I said, "Well, sure. We'd like to give you some feedback." Great, fantastic. So I went in. And they played the demo, and as they played it, Jack stopped it, and he said, "You hear that voice right there?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "It's pretty good, but do you know that's a Dawes Butler voice? You're doing a Dawes Butler voice." "Oh, if they want Dawes Butler, they'll get Dawes Butler." He said, "No, look," and he played another little voice, and let's see. I don't remember who it was, but it was another well-known voice actor. And he said, this is a steal. You're stealing another voice actor's signature sound. You can't do that. This is Hollywood. He said, "Look, I don't think you set out to steal. I think what happened is you grew up listening to cartoons, and you thought, oh, that's what a cartoon character sounds like, and you just kind of channeled that as you recorded these." He said, "But this won't do, because if they want that sound, they'll get the real guy." And then he pointed a couple of other things out. "You see this little accent you're doing? It's funny, but it's terrible. It's just, this won't do." And then Arlene said, "However, we want you to know, we think that you actually have talent and that you can really do this, but I cannot send this tape out. This is just," and Jack said, "And besides, this demo tape is basically just doing funny voices." He said, "Animation acting is not about funny voices. It's about acting. And you're not acting here. You're just making the sounds." I said, "Well, what do I do?" And he said, "Well, there are some workshops and classes that you can take, and we're going to suggest that you do them." I said, "Well, okay, who does that?" "Well, one really good one is taught by Susan Blue, who is a wonderful voice actor and director.
That's great.
And so I said, oh, okay, all right, I'll do that. I'll take that. And they said also, we think it would be really good if you enrolled yourself in a basic beginner's acting class, like a scene study. Wow. Ego's bruised a little bit about having to do something as a beginner, because I was working all the time as a voiceover artist. So, but this is different. And they were right, because acting, when it involves your body, since I started in radio, that's all about the sound coming out of your mouth. And so when the body is also involved, I didn't know what to do. So I took a basic baby acting class. And you know how sometimes this is probably before your time, but sometimes football players were taught to American football players, it was suggested by their coaches that they take ballet, because their big movements, their big muscle groups were very well trained, but their fine motor skills not so much. And the flowing movements in ballet would train a different part of their neuromuscular and mental system. Well, a lot of football players taking ballet lessons felt like that they were an elephant wearing a tutu, and when I was in this basic acting class, that's exactly how I felt. But I began to get the hang of it. Oh, it's about feeling and being, not so much making the funny voice. It's being in the scene and letting it actually happen to you in the moment. So that was actually a really good move. So I spent about 6 months in a basic acting class, and I took Susan Blue's basic animation class. And one of the things about Susan is she's very encouraging, and very positive. And it was really a great class. And then so I went back to Arlene and Jack. I said, okay, what's needed now? She said, well, I want you to take a more advanced voice acting class. And I said, oh, who teaches that? And she said, Michael Bell. The guy who says I can't do this.
The ironic thing is he went on to play the superhero Superman, and he was the villain Lex Luthor.
Well, and there's some interesting backstory to that too. Well, I took Michael's class. Michael's class was really good, but it was tough. It was really tough. And there were about, 20, 25 people in the class. And at the end of the class, Michael said, okay, nice work, everybody, but I got to tell you something. I got to tell you the truth. The truth is that there are only maybe 2 or 3 of you in this class who have a ghost of a chance of ever competing and working in animation. I'm not going to say who it is, but most of you need to find something else, because this is not for you. And he says, and most of the work I heard you do in this class was very derivative. It was imitative. I heard a couple of you do some sounds and create some characters that I thought, wow, now that's interesting. So I'm going to tell you something else, boys and girls. If I ever see you in an audition, I'm going to do that character that you created in this class, and I will beat you. Because that's the way it was. And you know what? He was absolutely right. He was telling the truth. It was tough love. It was hard to hear, but he was right. In any case, after doing these classes, I did get a couple of tiny little roles that are called incidental characters, where several actors will be hired to just do like the man at the gas station who goes, "They went their way," that kind of thing. And you may have 2 or 3 of those, and you may do group backgrounds, like at a restaurant, what's called wall up. So I got a couple of jobs doing that on, do you remember, oh gosh, I think the first one, may have been My Little Pony. It's also a Sunbow series. But then nothing. After a couple of little incidental characters, nothing, got nothing. And I was really frustrated because I wasn't making any headway.
What was this show that you just said? Because it sort of caught it out when you said the name of the show.
My Little Pony.
My Little Pony.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, the Sunbow. Yeah, well.
Yeah, so just, I couldn't get anywhere. And I did some auditions, nothing. I sent my little demo tape to all the animation houses, got nowhere. Well, there's a funny little thing. I was talking to my mother, who lived in Texas, and she was saying, "Now, honey, how's that trying to get into animation working for you?" And I said, "I'm not getting anywhere." And she said, "Well, what I think you should do is you should call up Hanna-Barbera and remind them of that letter you wrote to them when you were in the 3rd grade." Okay, when I was young, when I was in elementary school, I used to write letters to famous people and all, And when I was young, the Flintstones became the first American network primetime animated series ever. It was on Friday nights on ABC. And I became, as a 3rd grader, obsessed with Fred Flintstone. And I learned to draw him. Okay. So I wrote a letter. "Dear Mr. Hanna, dear Mr. Barbie, I am a 3rd grader in Oklahoma. And as you can see, I can draw Fred Flintstone. Can you use me?"
Oh.
Yeah, pretty damn cute. Well, I got a letter back. Now, it was probably written by a secretary, but it was signed by Hanna-Barbera. And it said, "Dear little kid in Oklahoma, no, we don't use 3rd graders to animate our series, but you show some talent and potential. And, if you become a commercial illustrator and find yourself in Southern California, by all means, look us up." And that kind of nice little phrase about going for your dreams, that kind of thing. It was great. It was a sweet little letter. So here's my mother saying, you should call up Hanna-Barbera and remind them about that letter. I'm sure they'll remember." Mom, no, 30 years ago. And look, besides, this is Hollywood. We work through agents and managers. It doesn't work that way. I just think that Mom, give it up. No, not doing it. That's ridiculous. Well, I went for a few more weeks, getting nowhere. And then I thought, well, you know what? What the heck? So I wrote a letter. "Dear Mr. Hanna, Mr. Barbera, you can't possibly remember this, but when I was in the 3rd grade, I wrote you a little letter, and you said if I became an illustrator to look you up. Well, as it happens, I'm a professional voice actor here in LA, and I would love nothing more than to work for you guys. But I'm having no luck at all getting through to your casting people. So I thought I would send you my tape and just, say, thank you for that encouraging letter when I was such a little whippersnapper." And a couple of weeks later, I got a call from the owner of my talent agency, TJ Esco. This is the big guy, the guy who I only spoke to like 2 times in my career. "Beau, this is TJ Esco." "Oh, Mr. Esco, oh my God, what's wrong?" He says, "Well, Beau, I'm looking at a booking sheet for you to do a general audition at Hanna-Barbera Studios." I said, "Oh my God, that's fantastic." He said, "Well, yes, However, we're a little puzzled about this. We do not understand how this came to pass, because Hanna-Barbera has not done general auditions for voice actors in several years. And if they were to start again, we would typically, as one of the top agencies, be given slots for maybe 3 to 5 actors to come in and audition. But we have not gotten 3 to 5 slots from Hanna-Barbera, only one, you. And frankly, Beau, if we were given 3 to 5 slots, you are not one of the first names that we would be thinking of from our roster.
An insult.
So we don't understand how this happened. And I said, well, I guess they just they recognize talent over there at Hanna-Barbera, you know. So I went in to Hanna-Barbera shaking like a leaf. And when you do a general audition, you prepare some material showcasing a bunch of different characters that you can do. And I was auditioned by Gordon Hunt, who was the director of animation. He was also a wonderful stage director. Gordon was the artistic director of the Amundsen Theater back then. Just a legendary and very, very kind man.
And he was married to B.J. Ward until he passed away. He was he worked for Hanna-Barbera. Yeah,
that's right. And his daughter is a very famous actress too. So I did my little general audition for Gordon Hunt, and I can tell you truthfully, I'm not being falsely humble. It was mediocre. It was okay. It wasn't terrible, but I did not blow the doors off. But a week or so later, I got a booking on this little animated series called Flintstone Kids. At the time, there were several, like there was Muppets, and then there was Muppet Babies on CBS. Well, there was I think it only lasted 1 season or maybe 2, of the Flintstones as children, you know?
Yeah.
And so they gave me this tiny little role as Betty's older brother. His name was Brick Bricker, you know? And so I had like 3 lines, but I got to go into the Hanna-Barbera studios and work with all these voice actors that I had listened to growing up in this legendary storied studio and do my tiny little thing. And from then on, I was in. I got called to the major auditions, and I got other roles. And so I've often said that there are 2 lessons for voice actors in this story. One is use whatever you have to get in the door. Even if it's a stupid letter you wrote in the 3rd grade, whatever you got, use it. And the second is listen to your mother.
Indeed. Yeah.
So that's really what opened the floodgates for me.
Oh, that's a lovely story. And I'm looking at the cast list for Flintstone Kids, and what a cast. There's of course Michael Ball's in it, along with Mel Blanc, Susan Blue, Hamilton Camp, Henry Corden, June Foray, Kenneth Mars, a young Scott Menville, a young Bumper Robinson, Michael Rye, John Stevenson, Jean Van der Pyle, BJ Ward, Lenny Reinrib, Frank Welker. Wow. And you also did another Hanna-Barbera thing as well, Rockin' with Judy Jetson.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was fun. I played a DJ.
You voiced Ramm, Rockin' Dee-Jay.
Yeah, which was typecasting since I got my start as a DJ in radio. And the Superman series is kind of an interesting story too, because this was originally produced by Ruby Spears, which was another of the big animation houses. While we were doing Superman, Ruby Spears was acquired by Hanna-Barbera. So it started off being a Ruby Spears show and then became a Hanna-Barbera show.
It's kind of goes full circle because Ruby Spears, the two guys behind it. Well, of course, I should really be saying Joe Ruby and Ken Spears. They were the ones who created the Scooby-Doo characters, like the series-ish, and then like, Hanna-Barbera made it, like if you know what I mean, really. So yeah, it's kind of is full circle. They did have something to do with Hanna-Barbera, because I think they did. Yeah, they did. They were sound editors at Hanna-Barbera, and they story wrote, and then they developed Scooby-Doo, and then obviously they created Ruby Spears Enterprises in 1977. Sorry for interrupting, but keep going.
I think it's just amazing that you know all this.
Oh, thank you. It's just it's all to do with my autism. I'm on the autism spectrum, and you know, I'm just a voice actress from England, a little 18-year-old. So yeah.
Well, listen, that subject is also something that's really interesting to me, because one of my adult daughters has just been diagnosed as autistic.
Oh, wow.
And she was highly adapted. And knowing that this is something that's true about her explains so much in her life, you know. And there is neurodiversity all through the family.
Yeah.
And so several of us have, you know, there are highly sensitives, there are, like me, ADHD. I simply found ways to channel, you know, and use my neurodiversity. And so is my daughter. So we're all just in a period of tremendous learning about this, and about learning about autism, not as a disability, but as a different way that minds and nervous systems are wired, which have tremendous gifts, you know. Even though the world isn't super, you know, interested in working with it. Anyway, super interesting topic.
Well, I don't know what the correct term to say, but congratulations, your daughter. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it is.
No.
It is. It is.
You found out the answer. I don't know.
Yes. It's like.
You say my condolences? No, you don't say my condolences. It's a superpower.
Well, look, it is a superpower, and to discover something that's deeply true about yourself that you've had to suppress for a long time, that's something you say congratulations about. Absolutely. So we're in a real interesting period of discovery in our family.
Well, so. I'm glad you're discovering it, and you're researching more and learning more about autism. I was unfortunately bullied as a little kid because, well, I have Asperger's syndrome specifically. So I struggle more with socialization, communication. I mean, I was on a Zoom call to someone the other day, and they were like, honestly, if you never told me you were autistic, I probably wouldn't even have thought you were autistic. You wouldn't have even think you're autistic, even like if you told me. And I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, that's true, but the world only recognizes autism in a particular form.
Yeah.
You know? And so knowing that there's a whole range,
a whole spectrum.
Yes. Anyway, super interesting, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this. Is you know, that's just dear to my heart. Is finding a way for autistic people to really value what it is that they're bringing. You know?
Yeah, it is quite special as well, because autism isn't that common in girls. Well, it is, of course, there are a lot of girls who do have it, but it's not usually diagnosed until they're teenagers, adults. Well, I was actually diagnosed at the age of 4, so I was one of the lucky ones. They knew what was wrong with me for only a few years into my life. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I liked to rebel at the phrase "what's wrong with you." Much of the world will still think of it that way, but I just sometimes it just makes me sad that I didn't know this about my middle daughter, because we could have supported her in so many different ways. You know,
yeah,
she wouldn't have been so alone inside of herself.
Yeah. How old was she when she was diagnosed, if you don't mind me asking?
Just this year. and she's in her mid-40s. So
She's in her 40s. Wow. Yeah, I know I know a few girls who were diagnosed in their like 30s and 40s and stuff like that. A lot of YouTubers, you know. I only know this one other girl who I'm friends with. She's from Northern Ireland. She was diagnosed around the same age as me. Everyone else I know who's a girl with autism got diagnosed when they were older or in their teens. So yeah.
well, again, learning. Well, back to animation, the Superman series was kind of an interesting story, and it also involves Michael Bell. When they decided to do to revive the Superman series, it was to coincide with the 50th anniversary of the Superman character. So they decided to do an animated series, and usually they hire a director, and the director will hold auditions. But they did it a little differently. In this case, they decided to hold auditions for directors. So there were, I think 5 who were, up for the role.
So is this directors or voice directors?
Voice directors. Yeah.
Voice directors. I think I know who did win it, but I won't spoil it. You go ahead and tell the story.
I will. Yes, you do. So each of those auditioners for the voice director job got to bring in their own people to audition for the cast roles. So Michael Bell actually brought me in to read for Superman. And here was his thinking. Superman had always been played by someone with a voice that sounded very resonant and almost like a television news anchor. Because some of the early voice actors, like Bud Collyer, who played Superman, was a radio announcer, and actor. And so there was that sort of sound. But recently, the Superman character was really revolutionized by Christopher Reeve's portrayal, because Christopher Reeves went against type. He did it gentle. He was not macho. He was just real natural and sweet. His was a sweet Superman. And so Michael said, what I want you to do is try to walk the line between an authoritative sound with gravitas and the sweetness. And then when you play Clark Kent, you've got to be able to pull some of that gravitas out again, because he's not Superman. He's just a guy. He's a nerd guy. He might have autism. He's that kind. He has that kind of character.
Yeah.
And so he said, that's the way I want you to play it. So that's the way I did it in the audition. But as it turned out, Jenny McSwain won the audition and got the role as voice director for Superman.
Yeah.
But they also, the producers selected the cast members, and I was selected as Superman. However, I was not Jenny's Superman. She did not invite me to audition for the role. Michael did, so I was not her choice. So
and she got cast as Lois Lane.
And yes, and Michael brought her in to read for Lois Lane. Michael said, you know what? She is Lois Lane.
Well, let's mash it all together. We can make it better.
So she did not cast herself as Lois Lane. The producers
didn't cast you as Superman.
No.
Michael cast you as Superman.
And she had brought him in to read for Lex Luthor.
Lex Luthor, yeah.
Her idea was she wanted to go kind of against type. You expect Lex Luthor to be, a diabolical evil sound, something like that.
Yeah.
And Michael played it very differently. He played it very soft. Oh, Suits. So you think you got me? Well, it was that's kind of the way he went. But I was never Jenny's choice. And the first couple of episodes, the idea was, okay, play it like you did it in the audition, because the executives picked you. And so my Superman voice was a little bit more like Christopher Reeve, a little more gentle. Well, after about 2 episodes, Jenny called me in the booth and said, "This ain't working. You got to butch it up. We need to make it more macho."
Buff it up.
Yeah. So, okay. So I think I can hear a difference in the later episodes because it's just a little
Yeah.
more like, "Lois, Jimmy," a little more like that. And
Yeah.
so anyway, it was great fun to do because here's another little thing. When I was a little boy, when I was like maybe 4 or 5 years old, I was a Superman fanatic. Watched the television series with George Reeves, in the 1950s. And I guess it was when I was 5, I got for Christmas a Superman suit for Christmas. And unfortunately, as I was putting it on, there was a warning label printed on the tail of the shirt, the costume. And it said, "Remember, kids, this suit won't make you fly. Only Superman can fly."
I can't imagine how many kids hit their head
I was
jumping off tables.
to put it on and go up on the roof and jump off. I was, So anyway, I was a Superman fanatic. And so to be able to do that role, was just a dream come true, And I got to say,
We said the exact thing. I was saying a dream come true.
Yeah, dream come true. Yes, it was. It was. And in looking back on it, I can think of any number of voice actors who have probably done a better job than I did. Because animation wasn't my main thing.
Don't say that. You were Ruby Spears Superman.
It was so fun. It was really fun.
You are the definitive Ruby Spears Superman, Beau.
Well, so that I suppose that led to getting an audition for Marvel's Fantastic Four.
Fantastic Four, yeah.
I got to play Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah, and you were also with people like Laurie Allen as well, because she was in it.
Friend. Yes, my dear friend. She's an amazing, amazing talent.
And other people as well, like Quinton Flynn and Chuck McCann. And Stan Lee was in it as well.
Stan Lee, did little cameos in almost all of the Marvel movies. I guess all of them, really.
Yeah.
So he did cameos in several of the episodes, but then there was one where he played himself. He played Stan Lee in one of the episodes, and that was so much fun because he just got such a kick, and his wife, would come to the recording sessions, and it was just really a thrill to get to hang out with the great Stan Lee. I'll tell you something that's kind of interesting about Fantastic Four and all of the animation in that period. Almost all of it, the animation itself was done in Korea or Japan. So when an animated series is recorded, the first thing they do, the director has a storyboard, and so understands kind of what the scene is going to look like.
Yeah.
But the animation actors don't. Oh, we have a words only script, so we have my line might be look out. Okay.
Yeah.
But Jenny has to say, you're jumping off a 50-foot building and then landing. So it's like, oh, look out! Like that. So I wouldn't know that unless the director explains it. So the director has the visuals. So they record the actors, then they edit it all together, and they add the sound effects and the music and everything so that the whole episode is like it's a radio play. So the sound from beginning to end is completed and locked. And then they send that to Korea for the artists to do the animation. And the artists are matching the mouth flaps
Yeah.
to the recorded track. And the artists are given a bunch of different drawings of different sizes. And like, here's Reed Richards, and Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman, is like this high, so that the artists get a sense of proportionality between the characters. And so, but that's all they get, you know, and so they do the animation and it comes back. And it takes about 6 weeks, usually back in those days. It took about 6 weeks for the animation to come back. And then they do the final post-production before air. Well, sometimes there's a mistake. Sometimes there's a real mess up, and they have to figure out what to do, because most of the time they don't have time to wait another 6 weeks for the animation to be redone. They have to figure out how to fix it because it's got to air fairly soon. Well, in one of the episodes of Fantastic Four, I think it was called The Lost Coffin of Argos. And it was a little bit like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So the idea is there's this like lost coffin, they had to recover it, and it had kind of magical powers and that kind of thing. Well, in the beginning of the episode, the coffin was the size of a coffin, you know, about 6 feet. Well, apparently the animators got confused about the size, because when they recover the coffin in the episode, it's the size of a bread box. What? What? Well, what are we gonna do? You know. So what they did is, as the coffin, it's been a long time since I saw this. I don't remember the details, but I think the coffin was coming off the airplane on a conveyor belt. So they brought me and Chuck McCann back in the studio to record this line that was put over the video. So you're seeing the coffin, this tiny little coffin, come out of the plane on the conveyor belt. And the Thing, Ben Grimm, says, "Hey, Stretcho, what's wrong with the coffin? It shrunk." And as Reed Richards, I say, "Yes, it must be some strange form of molecular compression." So that's how we explain. And of course, in the later scenes, it's back to regular size, and we never really explain that. That's how they tried to make sense out of a coffin being tiny.
That is quite funny. That is quite funny. Yeah. I'm having a look at the cast for Fantastic Four. Yeah. My mistake. Quentin Flynn was Johnny Storm.
He was in season 2.
Season 2, it was Brian Austin Green who was
Yes.
Johnny Storm in season 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to look up that episode now. You've inspired me, Beau. I've really got to watch that now.
Yeah, it was funny, and I believe this was Brian's first animated series.
Oh.
I'm not mistaken, and he was like, "Ah, this is hard," you know, and you know, there's no assistance, and nobody's bringing him his Evian sparkling water, and we're just all kind of working actors working in a studio, and it's in animation you record the same lines, the same scenes over and over and over and over, and he wasn't used to working that hard.
Yeah. I'll tell you what else had a lot of animation mistakes, but no one really noticed. They didn't re-record anything. They just let it slide. Transformers. You voiced Octane.
Yeah, I didn't have very many lines in Transformers.
Oh.
There wasn't much to it. In later series, they made him into a bigger character, but just to have had a small part in that legendary series was just so much fun.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, because he was a Decepticon. So that means he was under Galvatron's commands. Well, I've got to ask. It's a habit of mine. What was it like to work not just on Transformers with him, but on other things? What was it like to work with Peter Cullen and Frank Welker?
Oh, Frank is a sweetheart, and just absolutely brilliant. And And it looks so easy when Frank does it. You know, it really, really does. And Peter's great. He's a little cranky. He's a little crusty. You know, but man, what a great sound.
Oh, have you got any good stories of them?
Not really. Chris Latta, who
Oh
played
yes,
Dark Storm, I think.
and he was in Visionaries as well.
Yeah. I can remember, Chris passed away probably 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah,
I remember him
1994.
almost getting into a fist fight with the director, Wally Bird.
Oh, this I gotta hear. I've gotta hear this.
Well, it was just, you know, a lot of these characters are really screaming, and we call them throat rippers, you know. Dark Star, you must come back to me. You know.
Yeah.
And the director says again, bigger. Dark Star. Listen, no. Listen, you're going. Dark Star. What I want you to do is.
You're probably going to be coughing up blood by the end.
You know, go, okay, I think I got it. Stop! No, Beau, listen. You're doing what I want you to do is you know, and so you do that again and again and again. And that's where Chris nearly got into a fist fight with Wally. Wally was meticulous. He was absolutely.
They did like 8-hour recording sessions.
Oh, they were people would be in.
I'm Lord Megatron. I'm exhausted. Give me a break. I can't do Starscream to save my life. I'm sorry. Yeah. Chris does it better.
But those throat rippers, very often, you would have to go to your throat doctor, and the doctor would say, okay, you're on vocal rest for a week, no talking, because you could really hurt yourself.
Yeah. I mean, when they did an X-ray thing of Mel Blanc's vocal cords, I think they found like something like they were really strong or something. That's how he could do Yosemite Sam or something along those lines. If I search a Mel Blanc vocal cords, it might come up. I couldn't resist.
I love that you know all these things, and
it's
so much fun.
Yeah,
well, that's the superpower of autism, is to be able to go down a very deep rabbit hole and do a very deep dive on something.
There's a video on what? There's a bit. Basically, they stuck a camera down Mel Blanc's throat, and when he was doing, I think it was Yosemite Sam's voice, you could see his vocal cords like move and stuff.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet. I've just seen it pop up in my feed, but just looking at the preview is just wow. I really need to start learning more about like science and health more. I didn't really study it in high school, to be fair, but that's another story. Yeah. Beau, I'd also like to point out now, when I told some people that I was going to be interviewing you, they were like, oh yeah, I remember Beau. He did some feature presentation voices for Disney back in the day with people like Mark Elliott and Brian Cummings.
And Andy Geller did a couple of them. And yeah, it's funny. That is the one thing that more people remember that I did than almost anything. And it was a session. Maybe I did a couple of sessions, and then that was put on back in the VHS video days. You know, there would be a bunch of trailers at the beginning of the video, and then this little card would come up, and I would say, and now our feature presentation. And more people, you know, remember me from that than practically anything else I ever did.
I don't think I've ever seen you do that, to be fair. I only remember you as Octane from Transformers.
You can find it. It'll come up on YouTube.
Okay.
Beau Weaver feature presentation. There it is. You know, taken off of a VHS. And the other thing that more people remember than anything is, for many years, I voiced several of the rides at Disneyland. where on Matterhorn Mountain, I was the voice coming out of the PA saying, please keep your hands and arms inside the car at all times. You know, and there were a couple of other places where my voice showed up in the park. And no matter what I'd done, you know, a network animated series or trailers for a feature film or documentaries or national commercials, people were, hey, I heard you at Disneyland. You know?
Aren't you
So
the guy
that-
from the Matterhorn bobsleds?
Yeah.
Oh,
But it's, you know, voiceover is a very weird little thing
yeah.
that now see, you pay attention to it, but most people don't. Most people do not know what this is.
Yeah, you've got different aspects. You've got the commercial voiceover, audio voiceover, animation voiceover.
And see, a lot of people, including relatives, I have like a relative back in Oklahoma.
Oh yeah, and promo voiceover. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, she called me and said, "Well, now, honey, we watched that television program that you said you were on, but we didn't see you."
Oh yeah.
Well, you see,
Commercial's the same as promo. Ignore me. Okay.
that's because what I do is the voiceover.
You should have said, "Did you hear me?" Though.
Now, what is that? I said, well, where you hear a voice speaking, but you don't see a mouth moving, that is voiceover. She says, I don't think I have ever seen one of them. I said, no. You watched television last night, you saw about 250 of them. So what I do, I'm the narrator. It's all of my work is off camera. And she says, well, now, honey, maybe if you cut your hair, they would let you on the camera.
Oh dear.
No, it's not that I'm trying to be on camera and they won't let me. It's really, you know what? Never mind. It's just hard to explain.
I like men with long hair. I think it suits them. Like I don't see a lot of men with longer hair, but like I just think it looks great.
Yeah,
on
it's
them.
very OG. It's very
Yeah, I like it.
retro.
I have a soft spot for it. You're welcome. You're welcome, Beau. And with this feature presentation, unfortunately, I don't remember you doing well, probably because it was before my time. And well, I pretty much, if someone says Beau Weaver, I don't associate you with those Disney feature presentation things. I just say, oh yeah, the guy who voiced Octane in Transformers, or the guy who voiced Superman for Ruby Spears.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, in the voice actor community, I may be a little bit more well known for teaching voice actors how to work from home studios, which I started doing in the early 80s and taught, you know, the community how to do it. And of course, now in the COVID era, everyone does it. It's the way it's done. But there was a time when people were, even my agent was saying, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Recorded at your home studio? Oh, no, you go out to the, you know, you don't record it in your bedroom. Well, it wasn't a bedroom. I had a full.
I recorded my bedroom.
Yeah, what's wrong with recording in your bedroom? Well, but it just wasn't, it made no sense to people at the time. And in the late 80s and early 90s and up through the early aughts, I would go to 5 to 7 different studios in a day. And Los Angeles is a very large city. And, you know, I would drive over 100 miles a day. And it's like I start off at a studio in the San Fernando Valley, and then I go to Santa Monica and do one, and then I go back into Hollywood, and then I go back into the San Fernando Valley and back into, you know, and so people in those days would ask me what I did for a living, and I would say, I'm a driver. I drive to studios. That's what I do. Now there's a thing that I do once I get there, but mostly I'm a driver. And working from a home studio eliminates travel time, and it enables me to devote more performance time, and I do a much better job.
Yeah. That's fair. One final question to round off this interview, Beau. Now, this is a sort of personal, well, I wouldn't really say it's personal, but you know, when I say the question, you'll probably get why. As a girl who is starting to work from, well, when I say work from home, well, I want to expand like my space. I want to convert my wardrobe into a recording booth. What would you say the best advice? I would say particularly to me, but this is for everyone at home who's watching who wants to get a home studio as well. What's the best piece of advice you can give to someone if they want to start recording from home? Where do they start?
Well, that's a good question. It really, the main thing to remember is that it's not about the microphone or the preamp or the equipment. It's really not. It's about the performance. You know? And you need to create a space where you can feel good performing. Now, hunching over in a closet is probably not good. You need to create a space where you feel really good and where your body can move. There are a lot of different ways to acoustically treat a room where you can record. And oftentimes, believe it or not, if you have a large walk-in closet with a lot of clothing hanging around, a lot of times that'll sound great because the clothing will absorb the bounce that you need to get rid of from the parallel walls. So sometimes something very simple will solve the acoustic problem. And there's a man named George Whittam. I don't know if you know George. George Whittam.
The name sounds familiar.
GeorgeTheTech.com. And he is the preeminent guy for consulting people on building home studios. And George will often say, if it sounds good, it is good. Even if it's recorded in a walk-in closet, if the acoustics are good in that walk-in closet, well, you're good to go. And there are some clients that George has that say, okay, I got $250,000 to spend building a home recording studio. And some people say, I got $300. And he's like, yeah, okay, we can work with that. There is a little piece of advice I would give. You do not need the complicated recording software. Like people often go to Pro Tools, which is kind of the industry standard. If you are recording and mixing music, or you are doing post-production for a television show where you're editing sound and dialogue and music and all of that kind of stuff, yeah, the multi-track software, that's great, but it's exceedingly complex to use and the learning curve is steep. You don't need that. There's a simple little program that I discovered about 10 years ago and turned on most of the voice actors in Southern California. It's called Twisted Wave. Twisted Wave for Mac.
Oh, it's for Mac.
It's
see.
For Mac. But it only costs, I think it's like $80. You can get it from the Mac App Store or directly from the Twisted Wave website. It's very simple, yet very powerful. And you don't need the suit. It will sound just as good as the $600 software. So, and there are simple pieces of recording technology. An audio interface that costs $100 may sound just as good as the setup where the guy bought a $3,000 preamp and a $3,000 Apogee A to D converter and all that.
Yeah.
And the little $100 Focusrite interface sounds just as good. So it doesn't have to be expensive and complex to get the job done. And George has a lot of resources on his website, GeorgeTheTech.com, or just Google George Whittam, audio, and it'll come right up. And he has a lot of resources on his website to help beginners get started in the recording at home world. And it doesn't have to cost a ton of money to level yourself up to where you're producing sound that is airable, that is national quality.
Wow. I will.
Mostly, it's about the performance.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know why I just went like, wow. It's like I sounded so sarcastic. I really do apologize. But sorry, you'll have to bear with me. My mind has just suddenly gone blank. It's like, when to explode when it just
and again, back to, since you're interested in animation, maybe more of the people who are watching this would be more interested in that part of it.
Yeah.
Just what Jack Angel told me, back in the 80s, it's not about funny voices. I mean, you may be using pinching the vocal cords to create a particular sound, but what makes it good isn't that it's a funny voice. It's the acting, it's the character, it's the way that the character you created reacts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, indeed. Yeah, bless Jack. Yeah, I miss him dearly. I didn't know him, but I remember I was at college when I found out he passed away. I was like, oh, yeah, because
great talent, and he was very, very generous with everyone. He was super generous with me, helping me understand, and he told me the truth in unvarnished terms, but kindly, in a way that it was like, yeah, you can do this. You're not ready yet, but that's something that's really important to know, because if you, for instance, send out a demo before you're ready, that may be your only shot.
That's what I've been told. I'm working on a demo right now, and I'm not sure if you can see. That's my first. Right, that was my first voiceover job. You can't really see it. It's a helicopter coin-operated ride. It's just there. I'm working on a theme park ride at the moment. I'm working on a demo. I'm working with like a guy who is like one of the top men in animation who's helped me produce it. And he's given me so much advice, and he said this may be your only shot. So if this demo is actually for the US market, because they say if you're British you'll get more jobs. So they said just do British voices on that, whether it's accents or voices, just do British accent on that. For the UK market, do both British and American.
That's probably right.
Yeah.
But getting somebody to that you really trust to say, yeah, this is ready. You're ready to send this out. That's really important.
Yeah. Beau, where can we find you on social media? Do you have a website?
I've got a website. It's spokenword.com.
Wonderful. I'll put a link to that in the description for those who want to visit you. Team at home, thank you so much for watching this interview with Beau. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I did conducting it. Stay safe, stay happy, and thank you for watching. Bye.
Big love to all the autistic kids.
Big love to all the autistic people watching.